from Lo Sof Davar Goder, which is before that. Sorry. Kahana Omar, which is on Yutes Aleph. You have Kahana Omar? You have Kahana Omar?
7 lines from the top.
7 lines from the top? Have it?
Yeah.
So we were talking about in the Mishnah about Karachas Hakem, the bald spot in the middle of the vineyard, and Kahana says that this is the it makes a difference whether you're planting it afresh or whether, in other words, you're creating the bald spot at the time that you're planting the vineyard, or whether the bald spot developed later on. It always is 24 amos according to Beis Shammai and 16 amos according to Beis Hillel. If you originally intended there to be a bald spot in the middle, it's 24. The chubana became bad as a result of some grapevines dying off or being destroyed, so it's also 24. Rabbi Yochanan said it's not true. If you planted to begin with, even Beis Shammai agrees that 16 amos is good enough. You only have to have leeway of 16 amos in the middle. It's talking about here in our Mishnah where it said they required 24 amos. By 24 amos of the bald spot, that's when it started out being completely filled with grapevines, and then the middle got destroyed. The more machmir when it's destroyed than when it began that way. The beginning when it's planted at 16. The churbanos only when there were grapevines there and they were later destroyed, then it's 24. The chad varim asked is that true? If that's the case, do we say all the time Beis Shammai Mosifim Shlish that the ratio between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is a third? In other words, a third more. In other words, 16 is if you add on a third to 16, not a third of 16, but a third milabar, which is 8, right? So you get 24, right? 8 is a third of 16 milabar, not milagav. A third of 16 milagav is 5 1/3, right? A third of 16 milabar is 8. So if you add on 8 to 16, you get 24. So that should mean that the ratio of Beis Shammai is always 1/3 greater than Beis Hillel. Well, we see that that's not true later in our Mishnah. We talk about mochel hakerem. We talk about a vineyard which is planted next to a fence. So we said, according to Beis Shammai, if that was true, Beis Shammai should say there that you need to have 18 amos distance between the last grapevine and the fence in order to plant in the middle. And according to Beis Hillel, should be 12, whereas that's not what the Mishnah says. Well, we learn in the Mishnah, when you have a vineyard planted next to a fence, so Beis Shammai, you need a minimum of 16 amos, only 16 amos. Beis Hillel, the ones will say 12 amos, which is consistent. Because Beis Hillel said before 16, now they go down a quarter and say 12. But Beis Shammai, to go down a quarter from 24, should go down not to 16, but rather to 18, right? To be proportionate.
This logic is so fascinating is that this is several times.
Yeah.
The two people that have machlokas have to be moving lockstep with each other.
Yeah.
In terms of the logic, in terms of the.
That to be consistent. That's right. Is that so terrible?
It's weird.
Why?
Because one person's logic and reasoning has nothing to do with the next person. The assumption is just because you have a proportion.
No, but here Beis Shammai should also. No, I don't. I think the question here is better than that. Because here Beis Shammai should be moving down in proportion to their own opinion. Beis Shammai should be to himself as Beis Hillel is to himself. That makes sense. Why?
Because whatever happens...
Botanically, it should be the same reality.
Whatever Beis Shammai does, however Beis Shammai does it, whatever Beis Hillel does it,
yeah.
However they move,
They have nothing to do with each other.
There's no reason.
There's no imperative to say the word.
There's no basis.
Okay, I hear you saying. The Gemara does seem to view it as imperative.
And this is not the only time.
Well, yeah, okay. Easter boy Meimar. Some people therefore want to resolve the issue. In other words, explain how Beis Shammai is proportionate by saying Same man arba amos la'avoda. The take away from the 16 amos mentioned by Beis Shammai and the 12 amos mentioned by Beis Hillel, 4 amos next to the fence which people don't plant. Why don't they plant next to the fence? It's bad to plant within the first 4 amos next to a fence. So therefore, it's not inherently forbidden, it's just bad. So therefore, Beis Shammai really comes down from 16 to 12, and Beis Hillel comes down from 12 to 8. That's already proportionate. Because 8 to 12 is a proportion of a third more, right? Beis Shammai's 12 is a third more than Beis Hillel's 8, which is the same proportion we had when they were talking about 16 and 24. Some people want to answer like that. Nimmt again, nimmt zu stehen Mesrei al Daite Beis Shammai, because of Yitro according to Beis Shammai, Ushmona al the Beis Hillel, 8 according to Beis Hillel. Wait a minute, though, says the Gemara. We should have to say that according to Beis Shammai, avodas hagefen, when you have a single grapevine, we said the amount of distance you have to keep between it and any other plant is 4 amos. But according to Beis Shammai, logic dictates, again, not your logic, but the Gemara's logic is that it should therefore be not 4, but according to Beis Shammai, how much? A third more. Third milabar, not milagav. What's the third of 4 in Gemara talk? Two is a third milabar of 4. Because a 2 is a third of 6, which is the total of what you get when you add 4 and 2.
But you should not go ahead and what?
No. We have this all over Shas. The difference between a shlish milabar and a shlish milagav. This is a shlish milabar. It's a third of the new total, not a third of the old sum. Okay? So according to Beis Shammai, if their Beis Shammai always holds proportions are a third greater than Beis Hillel and Kilayim, so then Beis Shammai should say Zaravodas Akarim Yechidi, the amount of distance you have to distance from a single grapevine is how much? Not 4 amos, but a third milabar, more than 4, meaning 6. Okay, that's where it's kasha. So it says the Gemara. Now if we say this, then we learn if you plant within 4 amos of a vineyard, Beis Shammai says 1 row has become 1 row of grain becomes forbidden. Beis Hillel and Beis Hillel says that it's two rows. Now, whatever that goes, that's not germane. Whether it's 1 row or 2 rows, what is germane is that this Mishnah is saying 4 amos. And Beis Shammai then could say, whoa, the shiur is not 4, the shiur is 6. Beis Shammai just takes that as a given, as an axiom. How could that be? Namer begin Beis Hillel to Nisa. Maybe we can say there that it's mentioned 4, not because Beis Shammai holds 4, but rather because that's what Hillel holds. What's Nina? Then we learn Ezu Oris. What's an Oris? Hanotei Ashur Shal Chamesh Kefonim. Now, the Gemara's question is not intelligible on its own, but Mefarshim explained here that an oris is normally, in order to make a vineyard, we mentioned yesterday, you need 2, 2, and 1. Okay? An oris is where you have 5 vines in a row next to a fence. They also constitute a vineyard. And there the Gemara says that you must distance the plants from the vineyard a distance of 4 amos. Beis Shammai doesn't argue. Why does the Beis Shammai say something there about really this is being 6 amos? So the Gemara gives a very cool answer. Shani, the oris is different. Damar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, "Ba'oris hamu ukam shanu." We're talking about a twisted oris. Now, twisted doesn't mean twisted, but you'll see in a minute. Idea kima tartayim is balam, by the twisting to get swallowed up. Now take a look at the picture page.
Go. So, but that makes now they start making it down to like a basic piece of it. So,
the picture page on page test. Yud.
If by is a kisei.
See in picture pay.
He said
you see that the Oris is not a straight line of 5 trees. One is in, one is out. So Beis Shammai says it's taka 6 amos. 6 amos from the inner tree. See that? From the tree closest to the fence, it's 6 amos that you have to distance yourself. Beis Shammai is lenient to that. It only has to be 4 amos from the fence, the tree which is further removed from the fence. But it's 6 amos from the tree which is right near the fence. Okay? So you see that? So in Hanami, that Mishnah could be going like Beis Shammai, even according to our hypothesis that he keeps 6 amos. Why? Because the 6 amos are from the inner trees, not from the outer trees. Okay? Very simple. That's a twist. Alright, that's called an Oris HaMu'ukam, where it grows in a zigzag as opposed to a straight line. Okay, let's go further. Lo sof davar goder. When we're talking about a fence in our mission, we're talking about making a mochel hakera, meaning you have a vineyard on one side and a fence on the other side, and you need a distance of either 16 or 12 amos, whether it's Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, between the fence and the vineyard. When it's not just talking about between a vineyard and a fence, also passing. Even if you made boards, not a true fence, but rather boards next to each other, one next to each other. If there's less than lavud between each board, which means less than 3 tvachim, then it could go there. Then that is all considered to be a fence, and therefore you have to have the proper harchaka, the proper distance between the fence and the vineyard. Just even though it's not a real fence, even though it's a series of boards, which is 16 amos according to Beis Shammai and 12 amos according to Beis Hillel. Afilu kama v'afilu kashin. Now this is an interesting thing. What happens if you don't have a fence there, but you have a row of grain or straw, which is standing there, which looks just like a fence? Now, happens to be, if this is a row of grain, what's the status of this grain? It became ulcer, because it grew in too close proximity to the kerem. That's what I'm talking about. Not necessarily this kerem, because this kerem is distant, but let's say, for argument's sake, there was a kerem on the other side of the wall, on the other side of this grain. And it asked for this grain. This grain is now standing there. It's forbidden grain. It's even also ba'no. Now, you want to plant between this grain, which is standing there, which is forbidden ba'no, and a kerem, which is adjacent there too. So this grain now constitutes a fence. It constitutes a fence. What? You're getting hanoah. What hanoah?
He's using it as a fence.
No, you're not using it as a fence. But in Lumdis it's a fence. It ain't going to stop no robbers or animals that walk right through the grain.
No, but halachically,
but that makes it gives you a chumrah. Because if you didn't have a fence there, all you have to distance yourself from a vineyard in open field is 4 amos away. But here, since you have a confined area between a vineyard and a fence, that's why you need between the vineyard and the fence a total of 16 amos according to Beis Shammai, or 12 amos according to Beis Hillel. 4 amos is not sufficient. This chumrah is triggered not just by the presence of an actual physical fence, but even, as we said, by boards spaced 3 tvachim apart. And now we're saying it's even triggered by a standing line of grain, which is asur ba'no. It too triggers the necessity to have a distancing of 12 or 16 amos between the vineyard next to it and this grain in order to plant in that vacated space. Okay? So, says afilu kashin. V'asya kai dom Rabbi Chanina. This is going like Rabbi Chanina said. Eina iser nasa mechitza la'atzil. Although it's true that an iser, in other words, kili hakerem, cannot become a wall in order to save grain from becoming kilayim. Savri meimar. However, here we see that we have the thought to say ha'iser nasa mechitza li'aser, that this wall here generates a chumrah. So a kula can generate. That's what you asked me. It can't generate a kula. It can't serve as a wall between 2 different types of grain. But it can generate a chumrah. That if it's standing there, you need to have a broader distance between the vineyard and the wall in order to plant in the space in between. Okay, says Gemara, Daiti Rabbi Yehuda. according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Rabbi Yehuda was in our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda said,
It's just because it's a double ross.
it's a standing row of grain which you're not going to harvest. Because it's also about no. So it does become a fence, halachically. The chumrah, not the kula, but it does become a fence. Okay, it's not edible. It's also. Okay? So, al daiti Rabbi Yehuda said, in our Mishnah, that mochla kerem is between two vineyards. Not between a vineyard and a wall. So asking al daiti Rabbi Yehuda knows the typo here. It should be yasek b'toch kerem. That's fine and dandy. So, if that's the case, it's talking about between two vineyards. So what's interesting in mochla kerem and a karachas kerem? They both should require 16 amos, according to Beis Hillel. What's the kula Beis Hillel has by mochla kerem? The oil requires is 12 amos. If it's between two vineyards or surrounded by a vineyard, what's the difference between the cases? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda said, you know what? Rabbi Yehuda was talking about a case where the rows are not parallel to each other. But if the rows are parallel to each other, you're talking right. You need to have this is 16 amos, or that the mochla kerem should be surrounded by a wall on all four sides. It's a little bit tricky what he means by that. Let's look at the pictures again. By the way, you guys hot or cold? Yes. Yeah, because should I have to turn on the fan or it'd be too cold? Yeah. You take a look at the pictures on picture number pay base. You see, that's what we're talking about here, where the rows are growing. One's growing one way and the other's growing the other way, right? So, in order to be a karachas, you would have to have actually all the rows growing in the same direction. And then in the middle, you require 24 amos according to Beis Shammai and 16 amos according to Beis Hillel. Here, where the rows are growing in different directions, so it doesn't make a perfect karachas, and therefore you don't have to have more than 16 amos, because that's the kula of machol. So the thing is like this. I'm still not sure if this in this picture. It's not a good picture. Obviously, all these hand-drawn pictures are rather crude. But I think here that it's not. If I understand correctly, it's not that all 12 of these things are vines, are grapevines, but rather that 6 of them are grapevines and the rest of them are other kinds of growth, such as wheat or trees. In other words, if you have, I don't know if what I'm saying now is right. Let me just take a look here again before I'm... What? Because that's what I seem to remember from his parish on the bottom. But I might be wrong about that.
You never know.
No, I was correct the first time. Okay, just ignore what I just said. This way about both of these are vineyards. And a true karachas is only when they're both growing in the same direction. Now where they're growing, crossing each other's T. In that case, we have a kula that all you need is in between, not 16 amos but 12 amos. Okay? The true karachas is really a case, the absolute classic karachas is the case we had back in picture I and Hay, right? Where you take out the middle 9, and it's surrounded on all sides, right? So that's called chavush. But in this case, the minimum of karachas, I guess, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is where at least you have 2 vineyards growing in parallel to each other. Now, when it's going perpendicular to each other, that generates certain kulas. Okay? Says more further, for that which it says in Rabbi Yehuda that you're between two vineyards. From this we learn that according to Rabbanan Ramochel HaKerem, it's talking about when there's only one vineyard and the other side there is a fence, right? The question about this fence is Mukaf Gadol Kolosa Ruach, to require that fence should go down the entire side. Now, in other words, if I have, let's say, this is the case, I have 5 vines in a row. And they're part of a large vineyard. There's a large vineyard over there. But there are 5 vines in a row near the fence. The fence only extends opposite 3 of those vines. What do I say? Do I say the Mochel HaKerem is only if I have a fence extending down the entire line of 5, or even if it extends only opposite 3, that already is considered to be a Mochel HaKerem, generating the Chumrah of requiring where there is a fence, not the regular 4 amma distancing, but rather minimum distance of 12 according to Beis Hillel and 16 according to Beis Shammai, a minimum distance between the vineyard and the fence of that size. So it says, let's start from the following case. Dom Rabbi Zira said, and Rabbi Yasa both said, B'Shem Rav Masta, Ein zon of l'kerem gadol v'lo mochel l'kerem cotton. This is a very interesting halacha. You have a concept like this. Normally there's a status, normally there's a halacha you require, well, let's start it like this. In order to make a classic vineyard, you need to have 6 grapevines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Came halacha Moshe Messina and say, if you have 5, it's as if you have the 6th one there. If you have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, even though there is no 6th one there, we look at it as if it's there. And that generates certain chumras. Because normally you only have to distance yourself 4 amos from a bona fide grapevine. But here you have to distance yourself 4 amos from the imaginary grapevine. And so on and so forth. So that's called a zonav. The tail, when you have 2, 2, and 1, the tail generates an imaginary grapevine in tandem with itself.
We have the imaginary Rosh
Tor, imaginary Rosh Tor. The thing is like this. But this is only if you have the minimum of 5. What if you have a larger vineyard of 10, of 11? 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1. There it doesn't generate an imaginary vine. Why? Because you don't need it. Where to generate an imaginary vine? Only where you need to make it up a lumdus to 6. But it's not necessary, it doesn't generate one. Is that clear?
Which means you can get closer.
Means you can get closer, right. So that's the first halacha here. Ein zon of l'keren gadol. There's no tail, there's no halacha of a tail which generates an imaginary grapevine for a large vineyard.
Does it have to be a line on one side, or can it be secondary?
It's stuck with one side. No, it's not one side. In order to create an imaginary 2 rows of 3, that's be on one side. Ein zon l'kerem gadol she'eina tazakuklo. Oh, I skipped. Just a minute. Ein zon l'kerem gadol v'lo mochel l'kerem cotton. Now, mochel l'kerem cotton means when you have the concept of mochel, then the mochel means you have to have at least 9 vines in order to create a mochel. 9 vines, 1 in a square. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then if there's a fence over here, then you create a mochel in that direction. There's probably a picture of that. Which picture is that? No, Peital is the imaginary one. You see that? Peital is where he's drawing an imaginary grapevine. On one side, right? On the other, and then he's showing a large one which has 10, which has he's showing that the imaginary one and the one which has 5, and they don't make an imaginary one and one that has 10. That's his showing over there. He's not really showing that a Mochel HaKerem requires at least 9 grapevines. He's not showing that here. Doesn't have a picture of that. Pei is already the next Gemara. But name it. So says Gemara further, Ein son of l'kerem gadol she'ef tozogulu. You don't have to make an imaginary grapevine. 10 is enough. You don't have to make an 11th one. And there's no mochel for a small vineyard. What does that mean? Lo sarchutzelo yoser mitocho. It means that you don't aser outside it more than within it. Tocho shmona, within it you need a distance of 8 from any grapevine. Chutzelo shtei mesrei. You go outside, you're going to make 12. I think that's a question. That's a rhetorical question. Let me check.
But he is not really getting it from
No, not quite right about that. Well, let me just read it in the beginning of the line again. To aser outside it more than inside it. Tocho shmona, not 8 altogether, but tocho shmona means within the grave. If you have a karachas, need 8 and 8. What's 8 and 8? 16. That's Beitzil Shita. 8 from one side, 8 from the other side. So just the karachas requires 8 and 8. The mochel has to require less. What's the less which the mochel requires? Only 12. I'm still not happy with what I'm saying. Just a second.
But this case seems to be the same thing, but I can't right? It seems to be that there.
No, I was right. It is a question. It is a question. The Gemara is saying below mochel kerem kotan lusar chutzlo yosemi tocho. There's no mochel kerem for a small kerem, because then you would make outside of it more often than inside it. Meaning, a small kerem, the minimum size kerem is 5, right? If the plants inside the kerem are more than 8 amos apart, so there's no kerem. It disrupts the whole concept of the vineyard. The vineyard has to be where the vines are within 4 to 8 amos of each other. No less than 4, no more than 8. So the only time the exception rules, of course, a karachas kerem. We have a bald spot in the middle of a larger vineyard. So the Gemara is saying if a small vineyard can't have the din of machol just because of logic. Because if you have a minimum vineyard and it has 8 amos of distance between its trees, it's already its vineyard. So you're gonna, and within it, the shiur of distance is 8 amos. Outside of it, between it and the fence, you're going to give it a more severe shiur. That as long as there are less than 12 amos between it and the fence, it still has a halacha of a vineyard to aser the machol. That doesn't make sense. It's irrational. If anything, I should say that which is between the vines requires more distance than that which is outside of the vines. If I see the opposite is true, that you want to say that outside the vines, between the vines and the fence is going to require more than within the vines, that has to be incorrect. So Gemara is saying by definition, therefore, there must be no concept of mochel hakerem for a vineyard which has the minimum shiur of grapevines, which is 5, or anything larger than that up till 9. Once you have 9 already, then it starts having a mochel hakerem. Why? Because even if I distance between one row, I have 3, 3, and 3. So even if I distance between one row and the other row, 8, I'll still have a vineyard, because there are 6 together. So therefore, in such a vineyard, 8 does not eradicate the vineyard as an entity. So therefore, since 8 does not eradicate the vineyard as an entity, I can say that in order to produce, to disrupt the machol, has to be something more than 8, because 8 doesn't disrupt vineyards, and I can come up with a concept of 12. But if it's a minimum shiur vineyard, where any 8 amma distance will automatically disrupt the vineyard altogether, it'll blow it sky high, so there I say that there can't be a requirement for the machal hakerem, that the machal hakerem should actually require 12 ammas of space. It's irrational to require more distance for that which is beyond the vineyard for that which is within the vineyard itself. So says the Gemara, Vezu keren cotton, what's a keren cotton, what's a small keren? Sholosh keneged sholosh. 3 by 3. However, it's sholosh keneged sholosh, and here the Gra throws in keneged sholosh. If it's 3 by 3 by 3, in other words 9, yesh lo mochel, then it has a mochel. Rabbi Zira said, this teaches us, if 3 vines in a vineyard of 3 by 3 are enough to make a machol, so it tells us that if you have a very long strip of vines, but opposite any 3 of them there's a fence, so that already creates a situation of machol. Rabbi Yehuda asked the following question. This might be a statement. Yeah, it's a statement. Now that's picture pei hey. You have a fence, a double fence. See that in picture pei hey? You have a double fence. Here's a typo again. Nomar, do we say, Nomar, do we say, or Ne'emar, it was said, there are 3 tvachim between the 2 fences. Mutalavi zer l'sham. Then you can plant something there because it's considered ready to be separate from the vineyard. However, if there are less than 3 tvachim there, that it's not a separate area from the vineyard, Oslavi zer l'sham, you can't plant any seeds there. It sounds like it's a maritime halacha. In other words, it looks if the field, the fences leaves too narrow a gap between the 2 components thereof, so it looks like you're lying to plant anything else in such close proximity behind a fence which doesn't look like it's really separating in nearby to a place where you have grapevines. So again, if between the fences there's 3 tvachim mutalav, you can plant seeds there. And if not, also you can't plant any seeds there. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaakov Ra'idi b'shem Rabbi Shmuel b'shem Ben Lakish says, if you had 12 ounces between the vineyard and the wall, then you're allowed to plant between the vineyard and the wall, as long as you distance yourself 4 amos from the grapevines. That's what we've been saying all along. Now come the argument, in the divergent opinions. Has to be 12 by 12, meaning it's not just enough to have one place where it's 12 amos between the vineyard and the wall. Rather, you have to have a 12 by 12 area. Okay, 12 width between the vineyards and the wall by 12 length down the row in order to make it mutter. That's his opinion. Ramana argues, says not true. As long as it's one point, it's 12 amos away. Even if later on they come closer together, the vineyard looks like a rosh torsvar. Like the vineyard and the fence, it's still considered to be permissible. I believe there's a picture of this in picture Pei Vav. That's a case where it gets Meitzav, it gets closer as you go away from the area where it's 12 amos. Okay? Oh, the next part is the fun part.
I'm sure it's better.
Next part is very easy. We're going to do till the next Mishnah tonight. Till next Mishnah. It's all Erevin. Yeah. Okay. Mechitza Zakanim. You have a fence of reeds between the vineyard and the wheat field next door. Between each reed, there's less, or each rod, I should say. There's less than 3 tefachim. So it's not wide enough that a small goat can get in. Because the halakhic principle of lovu. And you can plant one thing on one side right at the fence and another thing on the other side right at the fence. If you have a wall which got an opening up to 10 amos, it's still considered to be an opening and not a breach, and therefore you can plant. Here's the opening, right? Here's the wall. Here's the opening. This is 10 amos. You can plant grapevines right here and wheat right here, and that's okay. Because it's a wall with the door. The door is not a problem. The doorway is not a problem. Okay? Then we're going to say even bigger chiddush in that in a few minutes.
Because you have a...
No. You don't need a Tzuras Pesach. We'll speak about Tzuras Pesach. It's either or. Either this is Tzuras Pesach. You don't need both. Okay? If it's wider than 10 amos, the gap, then Kineged appears to us, or over here it's forbidden. Nivrito appears to Sarbe. If there are many gaps in the wall, if there's more standing wall than there is open space, mutter, then you're allowed to plant one thing on one side and another thing on the other side right up to. If however there's more open space than there is standing structure, Kineged appears to us, and then opposite the open space you're forbidden to plant 2 different minim on either side. Yeah, there's very similar to Erevin, sure. All these halachos are halachos in Erevin as well. Also, pasuk Kineged habinayim. If you made a, now there's a lot of typos here. This is like a picture, pay Zion. You made your strips of wall opposite the area between the grapevines. You see that? So, also pasuk Kineged habinayim. V'yesh b'ayim arba'an. Each strip is 4 tefachim wide, which is minimum shiur for a wall. And here the Gra changes the gears dramatically. Haparetz murba lo'imid. You have more more open space, however, between the walls than there is walls themselves. So in that case, Kineged o'imid mutter. Opposite, you're allowed to plant other stuff opposite the walls. So you're now allowed to plant the stuff opposite the breaches, which happen to be opposite the grapevines. Okay? Also, what about the other scenario? The opposite. You made, that's the next picture. What's the... Peches. Also, passing Kineged Agfanim. You made the strips opposite the grapevines. And here, it should be V'yesh, and there is. Ba'omed arba, in those strips 4 tefachim wide. V'aparetz rabaloimid, and there's more in this area. There's still also more open space than there is standing structure. Pshito Kineged oimid mutter. It's clear to us that which is opposite the standing structure, meaning opposite the grapevines, is okay, because there's a bona fide fence. However, in this case, the chiddush is Kineged appears also. It should be mutter. It is mutter. No, the Gemara doesn't say mutter. The Gemara says also, but the Gemara changes the girsa.
Because there's no grapevines opposite.
Right. Even though the wall itself is not a bona fide halachic wall, because there's more open space than there is standing wall. But nonetheless, here, obviously, since there are barriers in front of the grapevine, so it's okay. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Lakish b'shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Chanina says, Not arba kukanim. If you stick 4 poles in the ground, in the 4 corners of the vineyard, the kasher and you tie a string on top. Sounds familiar, right? Matzil mishum peah. It saves you because of peah. Peah is the same thing in Yerushalmi talk as Tzuras HaPesach. It's a fascinating thing. Because of course, here the roots can grow, the leaves can grow, everything can grow, mingle. Doesn't matter. Tzuras HaPesach is enough halachic wall to stop the halacha of Kilayim. Okay? If you didn't think Kilayim was because of Marasai until now, here you see it. There's no doubt about it, right? Rabbi Yehuda said here there's a typo again according to the Gra. Just like by Kilayim Tzuras HaPesach works, so to build an Erev on Shabbos, Tzuras HaPesach works as well. Rabbi Yochanan said, Ma'aser Sholach Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Ma'aser Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha went to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri le Magniner, which was the name of the city. Heros Sadachas who based Chaverto. He showed him a field which was next to its friend field, and there was open space between the two. Oh no. I'm sorry, Beis Chaverto is an Ikres. Its name was Beis Chaverto. The name was Beis Chaverto. And there were openings of more than 10 amos. He was taking wood with soisem and stopping it up, and dukranim, poles, and stopping it up, until the gap was less than 10 amos. Okay, so, because gaps of more than 10 amos are no good. Now the thing is, the disciple's son throws in, although it is not necessarily Pshat in the Gemara, but he throws in Pshat in the Gemara, that here he's saying the Tzuras HaPesach can't be wider than 10 amos, which he knows the sheet of the Rambam by Ilchos Eruv, that Tzuras HaPesach can't be wider than 10 amos. So that's why he was filling in the gaps under the Tzuras HaPesach. There was a Tzuras HaPesach overhead. In order that Tzuras HaPesach should be narrower than 10 amos, he was filling in stuff so it would be closer in. So his shita was that you only have Tzuras HaPesach which worked up to 10 amos. The Tzuras HaPesach which has poles placed more than once every 15 or 20 feet, that Tzuras HaPesach is no good. Okay? Says the Gemara, Amar. He said, Kozek and Mechitza Shabbos. That's his shita both by Kilayim and by Shabbos. Rabbi Zira said, Moed Shimon Lakish. Shimon Lakish concedes leaning on Shabbos in terms of Shabbos. That, and here the Gra says it's a typo, Shein HaPei HaMatzel Tziyos Meser. That there too we say that a Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work for more than 10 amos. Rabbi Chagai Masi Somerkin. Rabbi Chagai said our Mishnah says that, because our Mishnah says that in order to prevent, in order to allow carrying, you can't just make a Tzuras HaPesach around an entire area, but rather what you have to do is Makivin Shlosh Chavoli, we take 3 ropes which have some thickness to them, and you tie them Zelam al Mizeh, one above each other, the Zelam al Mizeh and the other above the other one, in order to create a Mechitza 10 Fachim. Right? If you tie 3 on top of each other, they have some thickness, so you have 3 Fachim between. So we would say the same thing, and if we would say the same thing, so that's why it comes out to be rope less than 3 Tvachim, rope less than 3 Tvachim, rope that comes out to Mechitza of 10 Tvachim. So says the Gemara, by virtue of the fact that we say that you need such a contraption, it must be by Hilchos Shabbos, it must be that a Tzuras HaPesach by itself is not enough. Why would Tzuras HaPesach by itself not be enough? It must be this going court opinion that a Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work for more than 10 amos. And that's why in this case you have to put up the 3 strings. Says the Gemara again. I said the Mishnah, the Brisa says this. It says you have to put up 3 strings, one above each other. The on the other on top of that one. If you say, however, Tzuras HaPesach works for more than 10 amos distance, that even 1 string should be sufficient in order to create Tzuras HaPesach. Rabbi Yoina, Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yoina said named Rabbi Yeshua that Rabbi Yeshua boy. Rabbi Yeshua says the question. Hota Peah, that Tzuras HaPesach. Mat Amar, Ma Marta. What? Where does the string have to be on top of it? Mila Malin, does that literally be on top of it, or Minatzara can even be on the side of it? So now here the Gra changes the gears again. In Tamar Minatzad. If you're going to say that it works on the side, Koshke Milamalon, that certainly the string works when it's on top, because that's much more of a frame of a doorway, because doorway frames are generally on top of the doors, not next to the doors, right? So in Tamer Milamalon, if you're going to say it works, in the Tamer Minatzad, we're going to say it works on the side, Koshke Milamalon, certainly works on top. In Tamer Minatzad, but you're going to say it works Next thing should be in Tamar Milamalon. If you're going to say works on top, but maybe minatzad lo, maybe it doesn't work on the side because that's not the same type of bona fide tzuras Pesach. So it says the Gemara in Tamar Milamalon. If you're going to say it's got to be on top, so then lo amar Rabbi Chagai klum. Rabbi Chagai didn't bring any valid raya from the case of the 3 ropes. It could be the case of 3 ropes. There we required 3 ropes. Didn't say it's enough tzuras Pesach because maybe there was minatzad. Maybe the ropes were on the side of the fence, right? On the outer side or the inner side. So it wouldn't be a bona fide tzuras Pesach because if you require tzuras Pesach on top, so if you can't make it on top on the sides, you can't use tzuras Pesach. Then you have to have the trick of having a rope or stick every 3 tefachim. Okay. So says the Gemara again. Manavshach, imilamalon, hare milamalon. Then they're on top. So why do you need 3? You should need 3. Minatzad, if they're on the side, hare minatzad. Okay, then tzuras Pesach minatzad. There's no raya that tzuras Pesach doesn't work for more than 10 amos. Maybe tzuras Pesach does work for more than 10 amos. She said this tzuras Pesach wasn't a tzuras Pesach, was on the side. Rabban in the case of Mishem Rabbi Yirmiyah said he put there resolve it by seeing Kamin Dukran, which really tzuras Pesach works on top and not on the side.
We benefit from the land is your property, but we are not
Okay, so Gemara is answering like this. Let me go back a line because I lost my train of thought here. If you say they're on the top, so in Rabbi Chagai is no proof from his case of the 3 ropes. Because no matter what you look at, if it would be on top, then you wouldn't need Rabbi Chagai. Minatzad, if it was on the side, array minatzad. You have minatzad, right? I'm still not clear if I understand exactly what's going on here. I thought there was, but let me see. It doesn't seem like it. Yeah. I'm a little bit confused, but let's try like this. Let's see if it works this time. If you're going to say the ropes are on, must be on top. Rabbi Chagai's proof that you can't have a tzuras Pesach more than 10 amos is not a valid proof, because Rabbi Chagai could have been told about a case where they were on the side, and that's why you had to have three strings, one on top of the other. So now it says if they're on top, they don't need anything else. And therefore, and that maybe taka that case, right? We wouldn't require 3 strings. And maybe the fact they're on the side, and that's required 3 strings, so they're minatzad. So it says Rabban the case Rabbi Yirmiyah said in explaining Rabbi Chagai, they said Tipotter understand Rabbi Chagai's case where the 3 things are on the side is not talking about a case where it's impossible to make tzuras Pesach on top, where tzuras Pesach was minatzad. Where I was talking about a case Tipotter Basui and Kamin Dukronin. There you couldn't make a tzuras Pesach on top. Why could you make a tzuras Pesach on top? Because it was too narrow a pole. Dukronin means where they're like needles. They're like piercing things. So you can't affix a wire to the top. So the truth is Rabbi Chagai is still not a good raya. Because in that case, there were extenuating circumstances why he couldn't put up Tzuras Pesach, because of the narrowness of the poles. So what it comes out is that according to Rabbi Chagai wanted to bring a proof by virtue of the fact that you have to have 3 strings, one on top of the other, that Tzuras Pesach doesn't work for more than 10 amos. Says more, no, could be Tzuras Pesach does work for more than 10 amos. Why over there could you then put up a Tzuras Pesach? Not because it's inherently a problem, but rather because there, Lamaisa, there was no way with that type of wood to put a Tzuras Pesach on top. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zira and Rabbi Avduma the Chai from Shem Shem Elogin said, Lugo Afila Me'ama. The Tzuras Pesach can even be 100 amas tall. That doesn't have a shiur. Rabbi said, Hada, that Amalina Kilayim, instead of Kilayim. That can be even 100 amas tall. Shabbos, Lo Te Peah Gedolim Min HaKorah. The Peah cannot be higher than a Korah, a beam put up for recognizing that you're not supposed to leave the alleyway on Shabbos, which is what's its maximum height? 20 amos, right. Can't be more than 20 amos. Right. So they both appear in the same mission, beginning of Sukkah. Rabbi Yisrael said, no, Kilayim is Shabbos. Their parameters apply to Kilayim, it'll apply to Shabbos. If it's 100 amos, 100 Shabbos, it's apply both. I'll die to Rabbi Yisrael. According to Rabbi Yisrael, you said that, according to Rabbi Yisrael, Mabin Korah, Mabin Pei. What's the difference between a Korah, a beam over the front of a Mavui, and a Peah, a Tzuras Pesach? So says the Gemara, it sounds to the Gemara understood according to Rabbi Yossi, Kilayim Shabbos means that even by Shabbos the Korah can be above 20 amos. It can mean that there's no shiur. So it says, well, if that's the case, what's in between a Korah and a Peah, between a beam and a Peah? So there's more Peah ena matzelas miruach achas. Now, there are 2 ways of interpreting that. One is that it means that a Peah where Tzuras Pesach has to surround all 4 sides of a mavui in order to create a wall. Whereas a Korah only has to be on one side, put the Korah on the front of the mavui in order to remind people not to go out. That's one way of interpreting it. But the Stipler son is a better way of interpreting it. He says that a Peah has to be, a Tzuras Pesach in order to work must be connected to the ground. 4 sides means it has a top and 2 sides and a bottom, because it's the representation of a doorway. So it has to have 4 sides. A Korah can be suspended in midair. It doesn't have to have 4 sides. It doesn't have to have a loching shape of a doorway in order to work. So that's between a Korah and a Tzuras Pesach. Okay? Peah ena matzelas miruach achas doesn't say if it's only on one side, unless it's closed off on all 4 sides, top, bottom, and 2 sides. The beam, which reminds you not to exit to the movie, works even it's dangling down from one side. In other words, from the top, on hooks from the top or something. But this is going to look Rabbi Zira, Sebashem Rabbi Nuna, HaPeah ena matzelas ad shetem megufefes ma'arba chosea. A Tzuras Pesach must be closed on all 4 sides, up, down, and 2 sides. Amar Rabbi Papa, Amar Rabba Mar Memo. Bar Memo said, Titrapulios Sheba Kramim. If you have an awning placed in a vineyard, also the Talta Tachtein can't carry underneath them on Shabbos. They have poles supporting the awning, because the awning is not considered to be Tzuras Pesach, it means they change Sof Tikra. They're considered to be the ceiling, the edges of the ceiling. Vein Sof Tikra Matzu Shum Peah. At the end of a ceiling is not considered to be a Tzuras Pesach. A Tzuras Pesach has to be distinct from a ceiling. It's one of my riot. I don't think I brought this Yerushalmi because I didn't know I didn't bring the Yerushalmi because I didn't know Yerushalmi. I wrote my Eruvin book. But I wrote that an overpass can't serve as a Tzuras Pesach. And it's a riot over here. The Gemara is saying that the roof, the ceiling, can't serve as a Tzuras Pesach. Even if the rim of the ceiling is standing between 2 beams. Let's say that the rim of the ceiling, let's say the rim of this, oh, very good. The rim of this ceiling can't serve as a Tzuras Pesach. Because it has to be separate. It That's what Gemara is saying. Gemara is saying that it has to be. It can't be a sof tikra. There ain't sof tikra matzu mishum peah. It was just like a doorway would be affixed to the outside, right? You'd have the door frame affixed to the structure. So to the ceiling can't serve a Tzuras HaPesach. You have to have some structure affixed to it. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, like you see people make these, private use pictures. They have the same thing. They have their core.
Right, and you can't use an existing roof as your wire on top. Pinchas says, "Asu uvdu kumei Rabbi Yirmiyah." A case came from Rabbi Yirmiyah, ba'arba amudim with 4 pillars, v'leim arba pistilios, and upon them were 4 pistilios, 4 beams. Pita tato tachteim mishum peah, and he allowed people to carry underneath them because of the Tzuras HaPesach. The words on Shabbos, he allowed Tzuras HaPesach to create an eruv. Raibun v'Rabbonin, bon kumi Rabbi Zira. Raibun asked in front of Rabbi Zira, Peah maush datzim sukkah. Can you make a sukkah without walls, just the Tzuras HaPesach on 4 sides? The Bible says it's no good. Yerushalmi argues.
2 walls and a...
2 walls and a mashu, right? Yerushalmi argues. There's more Omalon Peah Matzel's Pesukah does create a concept of sukkah. So schach maushi yatzim sukkah. What about if you don't have even frames? Just have the schach on top. They put 4 poles under the schach. There's more. That doesn't work. Amar lon ain't schach sof schach matzim sukkah. The edges of the schach don't work to create a wall by a sukkah.
Just as an aside, years ago, the J used to make a sukkah, just like the Yerushalmi.
Tzuras HaPesach.
Yeah. There was no walls. It was just like a tent with just holes in there.
Just poles.
And the stock on top.
Right, which Bobby says no good.
Right, but so they obviously have...
They knew Yerushalmi. Look, Givaldi. So it says the Gemara, we don't, Mabin tells that what's between the sof schach and beams. Beams become part of the door frame. So they don't schach does not. Rabbi Avo said, all of this discussion is only in terms of discourse in the base medrash. You're not allowed to paskin that a sukkah can be made out of Tzuras HaPesach. You can't go out of paskin in public. It's forbidden. Yerushalmi holds it is okay, but you can't tell people because they'll get the wrong idea. Says the Gemara, very interesting thing. My sukkah kalat amraser, but sukkah which is lighter, say it's forbidden to go tell people. Shabbos chamor, Shabbos is more severe. Lo koshke is not kavachomer, you're forbidden to tell to people. It sounds like you're not allowed to tell people they can use Tzuras HaPesach to make an eruv, even though they're allowed to. Now to tell them. Man, this doesn't appear in the Bible. Maybe Yerushalmi Taka held that way. They're only walls, not Tzuras HaPesach. You can't tell them about the concept of Tzuras HaPesach. Rabbi Bun Bar Chia, Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Bun Bar Chia asked in front of Rabbi Zira, Man Tana Peah Matzelis. Who is the Tana who said that a Tzuras HaPesach works? Lo Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Who isn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? He said, Adeheni Tana. Which Tana did you think it was? Of course it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Okay, fine. Says the new thing. That's the end of the conversation. Anim says, do we do 2 blood already?
Yeah.
Should we stop here? Do you want to stop here? Because it's already an hour. So the mission.
We started your tests an hour. We've done 2.
Okay, let's go to the Mishnah. What?
We're behind anyway.
Yeah, let's go to the Mishnah. Rabbi we just said. Name say Yerushalmi Kilayim. Now in terms of Kilayim, you say Kol Pochos Mishlosha. Anytime you have less than 3 tefachim open, of course it's consultant. If it's closed, that's considered local. Mishlosha v'arba. If you have an opening between 3 and 4 tefachim in width, the openings between 3 and 4 tefachim. Imo eme rabala parutz. No, I'm mistaken. Mishlosha v'arba means if the beams which are standing are between 3 and 4 tefachim, then if there's more standing structure than open, mutter, then you can plant on one side and plant on the other side something else. Parts rabbaloi made, if however there is more free open space than there is standing structure, then it's also. And there should be a picture of that in Tzadik Aleph. Do you have a picture of that in Tzadik Aleph? Yeah, there the standing structure is 3 tvachim, and the open space is 4 tvachim. So it depends. If all together we say Omer Merubah Poritz, then it's okay. If there's more standing structure and open space, because there's a surplus of beams, then that's okay. But if there's isn't, then that's not okay. And that's what I was about to say. That Imoy Rabba Poritz Mutter. Poritz Rabba Oimid. If there's more free space and open than standing stuff, also. They're being the plan one thing on one side and something else on the other side. Me'arbad eser between
only once the cousin dies
4 tvachim and 10 amos. Again, that's the opening.
Prior to that point, you are merely
No, that's not the opening. Again, it's not the opening. If the beam is at least 4 tvachim wide, no, I was right the first time.
See, the problem is, like you're showing me one.
If the opening is between 4 tvachim wide up to 10 tvachim wide, 10 amos wide, if there's more standing structure than is open space, mutter. Then you're allowed to plant one thing on one side and one thing on the other side, even opposite the opening. Because I'm a Rubel Poros. There's more standing structure than there is open space, and that's considered to cancel the open space. If, however, there's more open space than there is standing structure, connected oimid, so that which is opposite the standing structure allowed to plant, connected apart, that which is opposite the open space is also. Yerushalmi Kilayim, if you have a pirza, an opening wall of more than 10 amos, even though there's more standing structure than there's open space, connected oimid mutter, only opposite which is standing is permissible to plant, connected apart, opposite that which is breached, it's prohibited to plant. Says the Moreh, lenient Shabbos, in terms of Shabbos, where there's no distinction of Keneged Oimid, Keneged Aparutz, right? In other words, by Kilayim we have this factual thing. If there's structure opposite the grapevine, even if it's not a halachic wall consistently all around, so you're allowed to plant on the other side of the structure, right? Because it impedes the grapevine from going further, at least in a halachic sense. However, in Shabbos called Apachos Mishloisha Gesosim. In terms of Shabbos, you need Poritz Merubah Oimid is not going to help us at all. Not even opposite the standing structure, because the standing structure is canceled by the open structure. Because we don't look at the botany, right? We're talking about Shabbos, talking about where there's a wall. There's no shame wall. So therefore, by Shabbos, I have to have love with less than 3 in order to consider it to be closed.
And you can't draw in the imaginary opening.
Right, can't draw. Right, no imaginary. If it's between 3 and 4 tvachim, bad eser, or even up to, or me'ar bad eser from 4 tvachim until 10 amos. If there's more standing structure and free space, it's mutter. If there's more open space and there is standing structure, also it's forbidden, even opposite the standing structure to carry. Yes, if there's opening more than 10 amos, even there's more standing structure, in open space it's also. Rabbi Chanin and Rabbi Pazi Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Leis kan misholosh vararba. They both said there's no such thing as between 3 and 4. You said before that if the beams are within that if the beams are within 3 or 4, but there is less than the beams are between 3 and 4, but there's Oymen Ruva Poritz, then it's okay.
She was willing to give birth.
Money is the guy's possession. It may have been guaranteed.
Never case like this.
Not guaranteed.
These are the beams. And these are between 3 and 4. So you said, even if this is more than 3 tefachim in between, so it's not drawn to scale, you can still plant opposite here and opposite here. Say it's not true. Saying it's between 3 and 4, this is not considered to be a barrier. Because the minimum shear of a barrier is 4 tefachim. So therefore, even if you want to plant one opposite here, where there is a wall, forgetting about the space between the wall, you can't do that unless this is 4 tefachim thick. Again, because the minimum size of wall is 4 tefachim. Okay? So it says the Gemara, there's no such thing as between 3 and 4 of the structure. Yesh compared to ein kamokam arba. If there's 3 tefachim, it takes away lavud, then there is more than 3 tefachim over here. If that's 3 plus, and this is less than 4 tefachim, there are no barriers between anything on this side and anything on the other side. Because this is not a wall, and this is parut, so you're up the creek without a paddle. Basically, Raimon asked the kasha, but that we learned, Mekivim Bekanim. You take 3 strings, one above each other. Why does that work? The kanim are less than 4 tefachim thick, so they shouldn't be able to constitute a wall. Just like it's saying here, where the kanim are less than 4 tefachim thick, they don't constitute a wall. They don't overcome the gaps. So to the rope shouldn't overcome the gaps between the 3 ropes, which are lying horizontally. If it doesn't work vertically, it shouldn't work horizontally either.
The spaces between the ropes were.
What?
The spaces between the ropes.
That's what Gemara answers. On my lay, so he said, don't ask me in that case, because the space between ropes is less than 3. That's why it's okay. What?
You had said that earlier.
Right. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Boom, B'Shem Rav said, in any event, in this case over here, if these are between 3 and 4, and these are only 3, so since Omen Ruval parts, even if these are less significant than the 4 tefachim they should be, they already cancel out the breaches, and one is allowed to plant on each side right up to where the fence is or should be.
And as far as an Erev for Shabbos, that's...
As far as Erev Shabbos, you need anytime Ruval parts, we say the same thing, yes. Ruval parts works for Shabbos as well. Okay.